Okay, it's exactly 5, and I'm just going to start with an introduction to the session on poetry. So when Sandeep asked me to take this weekly session beginning today, I was naturally very excited, and all of you over here, I think, know why, because poetry is certainly my first love, and I think that I have spread a lot through poems. So I thought it is a wonderful idea to sensitize people towards poetry. And so I think it'll be nice to know from all of you, what is it that triggered you to join this? And I would like to start with people who are not English teachers. Why poetry for those who are not English teachers and have joined this session today? Let's start with anyone who wants to speak. Raise your hand and let's ask you, why did you join this session? All right, Nibruti, go on.
Ma'am, actually for me poetry is you. Like the way you recite poems, and always the collection, the poems that you pick, they are very wonderful and very inspiring. So for me,
All
it's
right.
you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yes, Sharon. Sharon, just switch on your camera so we can see you as you talk.
Ma'am, I just take 1 minute to switch on my camera.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I'll second what Nibriti ma'am said because I had joined Gantry like it's almost 2 years now, and you have always selected like the perfect poem for the perfect occasion. Like your poems always match the occasion, and poetry is not something that I was very like I haven't read a lot of poetry, and I think this is the right step towards
All right.
getting to know good poems.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We have a non-Gyanshri person, I think, who's just joined. Am I right? Akriti. Is that the name I just saw? Did someone join us just now who's not from Gyanshri? And I would like to hear from you why you joined the session today. Why poetry session?
We have a very nice surprise from Ajay sir.
Okay.
From Scindia School.
Wow. Wow. Great.
Namaskar, Bimla ji. Namaste, Sandeep ji.
Ajay ji.
Good evening.
धन्य हो. आज आप पकड़ में आ गए.
Thank you so much because I just wanted to join. I cancelled all the meetings. I want to listen and hear.
I'm so flattered.
I'm so
flattered and honored. Thank you.
We need to learn from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ajay. Yeah. Anyone else who wants to tell me why did you join this session?
I can understand. Just fan mail. Let's go ahead.
No, I don't want a fan mail. That's exactly why I said not from Gyanshri.
I'll summarize. I'm not from Gyanshri.
You're not from Gyanshri. Yes. Sandeep, what made you think that we should have a poetry session?
You know, of late, I picked up a Rumi book, which I had bought in 2009.
Right.
And I had not read it. The book has a cover on which Kailash Kher has signed.
Okay.
I was buying the book at the airport and he was passing by.
Right.
So he walked up to me and he said, "What made you buy this poetry?" I said, "Your songs."
Okay.
So he gifted me his autograph on the cover of the book.
On the I saw your post. You had put it up. Yes.
Of late, I have been scoring my bookshelf. Is there any book left unread?
Okay.
So I didn't buy any new ones. So this happened to be one of the unread books. The minute I read, there's one poem about an embryo, unborn.
Right.
In Rumi. So I think this poem really shook me.
Right.
I said the way he can describe an unborn and how the embryo with the sunlight is about to come, it just shook me. So that is where my thought germinated.
Right.
That maybe it's time now that as we care so much about reflection and deep thought, you see, the only thing we do at my good school or Teachers Academy, as you want to call yourself, I think the only thing we make you do is make you pause, we make you think, and then we make you reflect.
Absolutely.
I think this is the challenge we are facing universally. So when people ask me today, why should we join the Good School Alliance? I said, well, this is not a marketing agency or anything like that. I'm not going to tell you anything. If you want to pause, if you want to think, if you feel that you're losing this ability to read, you must join us.
Right.
And as far as reading is concerned, I think poems are the first step.
Absolutely right.
That's
Absolutely
where,
right. You hit the nail on the head. Poems are the first step. And so let me start off with this, since Sandeep mentioned reflection, I think it's very important for us to treat even today's session as a reflection as to why should we have poetry in our lives. So my topic for today's session is indeed why poetry. And I was reading, in fact, a very interesting book by the same title. And I came across this person who's written the book is an American poet and a teacher of poetry. And he brought to light many things which I thought I must share with all of you. Because this session or these sessions which we will have every week on Thursdays is not about teaching poetry. I'm not here to teach you poetry. I'm not here to teach you how to teach poetry. But I'm here to take the group along to enjoy poetry. So my aim is to wake up people towards this particular portal. It's the sensitivity of poetry that I want to bring across to all of you. So why poetry? Tell me why poetry. Let me invite reflections on why poetry. What do you think? Where's the need for poetry in our lives? Ajay, can I pick your brains on this?
Sure. I mean, as Sandeep was showing, my current book which I picked up again was Rumi, the Red Book.
Okay.
Again, just a coincidence.
What a coincidence. Yeah.
It's the Red Book. So why poetry is, I think poetry is closely linked to life. Because, a river flowing is a poetry. Right? A wind brushing your hair just is a poetry.
Right.
So in the farewell speech, if I show to my class 12 boys just 2 days back, that Zindagi Kaisi Hai Paheli Hai. Now then, the emotions flow through it.
Yeah.
Which we cannot in the due course of talking and using jargons and all that stuff. We may not be able to express, but you use some rhythm, use certain powerful words and through that imagination, it connects so deeply and strongly. So that essence of poetry is really powerful.
Lovely. So any other thoughts from all of you who are here? Anyone who would like to
I'll simply read the poetry if you don't mind.
You want to read the poem? Yes.
Yeah, I want to just read it.
Yeah.
The embryo. When the time comes for the embryo to receive the spirit of life, at that time the sun begins to help. This embryo is brought into movement, for the sun quickens it with spirit.
Wow.
From the other stars, this embryo received only an impression until the sun shone upon it. How did it become connected with the shining sun in the womb?
Beautiful.
By ways hidden from our senses. The way whereby gold is nourished. The way a common stone becomes a garnet and the ruby red. The way fruit is ripened and the way courage comes to one distraught with fear. So this encouraged me actually to put this whole session in place and chase Manisha. It's time now that we start doing these 30-minute sessions of music, art, poetry, literature at random. And thank you so much.
This poem brings to mind a beautiful line that I read somewhere, that poets are alchemists of nothingness. Right? You know who's an alchemist? Somebody who can turn a stone into gold or turn any material into gold. So poets can turn nothingness into gold. So that's the power of a poet, and that's the power of poetry. It says in a very concise manner so much that there is to be said. And often, we say, don't be so prosaic or don't be so verbose. So when you read poetry, it's neither verbose nor is it really prosaic. It's not meant to be prosaic. So the reason that poetry appeals to people like us is because it touches the core. And that's what is important to notice, that poetry touches the core, and it probably again provides us with a history of the human heart. Again, a beautiful expression, because if you go back into history, you look at our epics, what is it all written? What is the genre? Right? It's poetry. It's verse. Okay. We see a lot of authors who say, okay, I write novels, but I think I like to read poetry. Okay. And sometimes we read prose and say, oh, it's so poetic. Right? So what is it that makes it poetic? Or what is it that makes it a poem or differentiates it from prose? Any takes on that? Yes, Shantini.
Ma'am, I was thinking this like from the beginning of this session, and it may sound not very polished, my answer, but it is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Is poetry is like language dressing up.
Okay.
It's like you're dressing up for a party. You just getting ready, but you're getting ready so much more special.
Very nice.
And that makes all the difference. Like just that.
Beautiful. I love the expression. I love that expression. Well done, Shantini.
Thank you.
Good. Any other thoughts on what poetry is? The fact that you all have joined this session says that you are interested in poetry. Okay,
so I can add a word, ma'am.
Yes, sure.
Even justice is now called a poetic justice. Just see that power.
Poetic justice.
There is something extraordinary.
Absolutely.
We use the word poetic justice. That's part of poetry.
Yeah. You have a poetic license also. Right?
No, in your legal jurisprudence, when you read so many of these notings, you will get references to poets.
Yes.
I mean, you go to the Supreme Court writings. I've recently read a judgment. He had 3-4 references to a poet in his judgment.
Right.
So when Ajay sir talks of poetic justice, which means that what poems do is they give us spirit.
Yes.
And they bring to life a soul.
Absolutely.
So if prose was just a body, then I think the soul should be the
poem. The words in it, the way the words
in it, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what Amardeep is currently doing, he's currently, by the way, in Harvard. Amardeep is a gentleman who comes to my good school on Guru Nanak's Indic Saints, what he does, the show once a month. So today he's reached Harvard there, and they've invited him on the role of Indic Saints.
Right.
In understanding the philosophy of literature.
Absolutely.
So if you that's what he's doing.
And all our saints, they sang. They wrote poetry. They sang their poems. So whether you have Guru Nanak or you have Tukaram or you have Sankaracharya, they all did this. So that was the beautiful medium through which they could really express their thoughts, their sentiments. And I think poetry provides us with a lot of pleasures. The first being the pleasure of sound, the rhythm in the poetry, which converts a lot of the poems into music. That is what appeals to us. Poetry appeals to us because it gives us the pleasure of travel. You actually travel with the poems that you read. It appeals to us because it gives us so many metaphoric comparisons, analogies, and so many things are put in place through these analogies and through these comparisons, and they come alive. So it appeals to some senses of ours much better than prose can appeal to us. It also, I read this again somewhere, that it provides us with a certain companionship. And this companionship happens because we carry poems with us. Lines that appeal to us, poems that appeal to us, verses that appeal us, we carry them along with us and they become our companions. So they are with us all the time and we use them. We use them to give us solace. We use them to give us some sense of balance sometimes, to bring some calmness to our mind. So often we turn to poetry. And this happens when we just learn to read poetry and enjoy it. We read it, understand whatever it means to us. We interpret it as per our understanding. It appeals to us, and we forget about the rest of the grammar of the poem, the structure of the poem, the meter in the poem. If we put all that aside for a little while and just read it and see what it means to us, it'll appeal to all different senses within us, and it will make us filled with a certain sense of joy. And I just want Manisha to display a poem which sums up what I'm trying to say today. So, sure. Manisha, will you just... Yeah. So this is a poem by a poet, a British poet called Billy Collins. And let's see what he says about poetry and why we should just read poetry and how we should read poetry. Yes, Manisha.
Is it visible, ma'am?
It's just coming on. Yeah. So, I'll open it on my own device also here so that I can read it while you people read it on the screen. Okay, so here's the poem. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light, like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. Need I say more? This is what we teachers are generally guilty of, right? So here's a teacher who's written this poem about how a poem has to be enjoyed for its essence, for what it conveys, what it says. So, reflections on the poem. What do you think? What does this poem by Billy Collins make you think? How did you learn poetry and what? Yes, Saloni, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I think a poem can mean different things to different people. Yes. And expecting that everybody will interpret it in the same way as you do is the biggest mistake. Yes. So even when I teach poetry in class, sometimes children come up with their own interpretations. Wonderful. It appeals to them differently, and I always tell them that there is no right or wrong answer here, because like every piece of art, this is something which is open to interpretation. So if this is what you take away from the poem, it's absolutely fine.
Yes, that's right. Yes, Pushpita.
Yes, ma'am, I feel the same, like just as the poet was saying in this poem also, that we try to, tie it to a rope and we think that, there is only, torture, some kind of meaning out of it. But there is, just like Saloni said, there are so many, possibilities in a poem, and each one of us might find some little gem that appeals to us, which is, our takeaway from the poem. So our way of looking at it, there might be one stanza that a particular, that appeals to a particular person. There might be some meaning because of our various experiences and the various backgrounds that we come from. It might appeal to us.
or it might resonate with us because we've had a similar experience. So each of us can, interpret the poem or react to it or make it our own, basically, in different ways.
Yeah, and that's why all of us, I think, have a favorite poem. How many of us have a favorite poem? I'm sure all
I have several.
Several, yes, you have several, right? Yeah, and that's the main reason is this, that we interpret poem the way we want to, and we have every right to do that, and so do the children who read poetry with us. So when we do poetry as a subject in the classroom, and we have to prepare them to do an examination on what is prescribed, it's a different matter altogether. But here, when we are in a group, I don't think we have any students who have joined us today, but here in this group of adults, I think we need to look at how we can interpret poetry, to enjoy the beauty of poetry, to take it back with us, and yes, to look at different forms of poems, different genres, different ways of writing also, and how we can see that poetry does not necessarily have to be something that can only be sung. That poetry is not something where every line rhymes with the other line. So there is so much of technicality to writing poetry, to interpreting poetry. But here we are not preparing ourselves for an examination. So I think it's time that we shared what we read. We share our poems, the poems like Sandeep did. He was so taken up by the book and he wanted the word to spread. So if we can share what we want to share, if we can read, and that would be the purpose of this meeting, this group discussion that I would like to call it, and not a session where I'm going to teach or I'm going to sermonize and tell you, okay, this is how we're going to go about it. So any thoughts, please be free to share. We still have about 7-8 minutes. Yes, Sandeep.
There are just two things.
Yeah.
When you come to a session like this, your biggest takeaway is you get a breath. And I think what we need to just reflect today is why we all decided to breathe today together.
Yes.
Why our breath, like Sir said, that, when the wind blows over your hair, there's poetry in that. So people being here today itself is a beating of hearts.
Absolutely.
And like you so beautifully said that you may just feel so strongly about one poem, please carry it along. You may feel strongly about sharing it, please share it. It's like what really tickled me was what you wrote for me the other day. So it made me think that this one piece it was like very autobiographical and very uncanny. It actually hit me very hard.
Yes.
How you found one literally to make a autobiography of me in that one poetry.
Yeah.
It really hit me very hard. And that's precisely why I started reading poetry.
Right.
Though I've been contemplating that we will do. I've been telling Manisha for some time, it's time we brought in art poetry music. And luckily it's happening. All thanks to you and your colleagues and all your fans and followers around you. I think we are at a very interesting cusp in learning. So if we can use particularly poetry, I think we'll go a long way ahead in our experiment of liberal arts learning.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Sandeep. In fact, you and I are both, I know, great fans of Parker Palmer.
Absolutely.
And in his introduction to a book of poems that he used in a teacher's training session, he talks about the value of poetry. And there's a whole collection of poems in a book which is right in front of me. It's called Teaching with Fire, Poetry That Sustains the Courage to Teach. And it's a collection of wonderful poems for the teaching community, of course. But I'm just going to, since we just have about 5 minutes, I just want to read to you something from this, and it's called On Practical Uses of Poetry. Now from something very, sensitive, something very beautiful, something which could be metaphorical, etc. We are coming to something which is very practical. And the poem here is called On Practical Uses of Poetry. The editors would like some input on practical uses of poetry. Should I tell them I write at least a poem a day to a nearly dead friend and will keep writing, keep mailing them every day, even if she can't read, can't write, can't answer? Her sister will open them and read them to her twice. I will keep writing because my friend loves a good poem now and then. So, that's the beauty of poetry. Could you see the subtleness of and the depth that the poet was conveying through this? Right? I mean, I don't want to dissect it at all because that would mean, taking away from what it says here. But it's so simply written. It's almost like a piece of prose, a conversation. But it's so simply put and it's so deep in its meaning. So friends, I think we all should dig and bring out poems that are relevant to us, relevant to our situations, and I think we are blessed to be living in a time when we have the access to technology and to this device which keeps hearing what you want and it provides you with exactly what you want. And you won't believe me, this is so uncanny. One of my friends in our society lost his sister the other day. And he had put it up, we have a little reading group and he's part of the reading group and he had put it up. And I was thinking, I wish I could find a little verse to send it to him just to console him and make him feel better. And lo and behold, I was going through something on the internet and there popped up this poem by Maya Angelou, just a small verse. And it was so beautiful and so apt and appropriate and I immediately sent it to him. It just touched him. So I think we have around us, we are surrounded by some beautiful poetry, by some beautiful literature. But poetry, again, I will do this in one of my sessions. I'm not saying, please don't think that poetry is only beautiful. So we will also do sections where there are collections of poems. We have a whole collection of war poems. And I taught these war poems at one point of time. It was part of the syllabus in the Cambridge syllabus. So we have war poems. We have poems on destruction that is going on around us. We have poems like The Raven, which talk about, the dark society that we live in. So there are poems and poems and poems. It is for us to discover them. And I think in the next session, it will be nice if all of you could share something that you have, like your favorite poem, something that you carry with you, something that you identify with. It would be lovely to hear your voices. And if you are a person who dabbles with writing poems, writing poetry, then it would be lovely if you could share that also. And before I finish, one little thing I just want to share with all of you, the difference between the words poem and poetry. So poetry is a collective noun. Poetry is a collection of poems. So when we say I write poetry, it means you write a lot of poems. And I read a poem, I don't read a poetry. So just a little yarn while as I finish. Once a teacher, always a teacher.
Absolutely. Binda, just before you go, just to keep everyone on one platform, there is a little group called the GSI Journal. So we'll be using that for learning of this community. So please don't get carried away by walking into the Teachers Academy or My Good School. Each one has a separate reason of existence. The Teachers Academy focuses only on the master class of Saturday. My Good School focuses only on the Sunday school. So for these sessions, which are the special sessions, we will all build up a GSI journal, and what you wish to write, what you wish to share, we'll publish them in the GSI journal, which has a circulation of 1,500, and we normally send out one email a week. So feel free to send submissions to the GSI journal. GSI stands for Good Schools India. So this is a journal on Substack, and Substack, if you end up there, you'll find loads of good reading on Substack, because Substack is full of poetry, literature, and good names who actually write. It's just for the people who are passionate about writing. So that's a unique thing about Substack. So our Substack is very well looked up to. So please send, we'll be happy to post. And before you go tomorrow, look forward to something coming on the GSI journal. It's the Laila Majnu podcast by Oshi and Simar.
Wow.
So tomorrow is the 15th.
I like what those two girls do.
Yeah. So tomorrow I just finished listening to it multiple times. So tomorrow evening, which is 15th at 7 p.m., it goes, and they made 17 episodes. So I think, so if someone asks me why we exist here, I think this is why we exist.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We don't exist here because someone wants a certificate of having attended us, but we exist here for the joy of learning.
Absolutely right. Wonderful.
So, you know, in 18 months, they've only missed 1 month. Perhaps their parents shouted at them, you have exams or something. But they have not missed a single month in 18 months. 17 episodes coming tomorrow.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. I'm proud of them.
Yes.
So, I think,
thank you, and please share your thoughts in GSI journal.
Yes, please do that. But is there anyone who wants to say something quickly? Do we have a minute, Manisha ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But if we can take a minute or two, is there anyone who wants to share anything? Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you for having attended the session, and let's look forward to more sharing of poetry in the next week, next Thursday, 5 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.